That Monday was supposed to mark the culmination of everything we had worked for. 15 years of building and defending a certification that separated us from our competitors had finally reached its decisive day. Entire departments depended on it. Investors watched us because of it. My role, though often unnoticed by outsiders, ensured every procedure, signature, and compliance detail stayed airtight. The morning was meant to be routine. Auditors would arrive, review the documents, verify the protocols, and we would continue operating with the confidence that our future was secured for another decade. I reached the office earlier than usual, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and pride. I held my badge, a simple plastic card worn smooth by years of use, and placed it against the reader. The machine beeped and flashed red. I frowned, thinking it was a temporary glitch, and attempted again with more force. The same red light appeared, colder this time, as if delivering a verdict. Behind me, footsteps slowed. Conversations dropped. People glanced away from their screens to observe what was happening. It felt as though someone had paused time. A security guard I had known for years approached slowly, gripping a clipboard as if it were a shield. He avoided my eyes when he spoke, his tone apologetic. He informed me that my keycard had been revoked and that he was instructed to escort me out. I demanded to know who issued the order. After a moment of hesitation, he whispered the name of the CEO's son. The answer stunned me more than the red light. Out in the parking lot, I watched the auditors arrive. They entered the building confidently, unaware that the only person capable of guiding them through the process was standing outside, powerless. The downfall had already begun. His name was Lucas, and from the moment he stepped into the building, it was clear he believed his last name was a qualification. At 28, he carried himself with the swagger of someone who had never been challenged. He dressed like a man auditioning for power, designer stubble carefully trimmed, Italian loafers polished to a mirror shine, and a luxury watch that seemed to shout louder than he ever could. He spoke in confident, empty phrases, as if vocabulary alone could replace understanding. His father, the CEO, introduced him as the company's future. Employees clapped politely, though no one missed the uncomfortable silence that followed. Lucas had supposedly studied business in Europe, but every conversation he initiated revolved around trends, slogans, and theories detached from actual operations. Whenever a technical question arose, his expression shifted from arrogance to confusion, revealing the fragile veneer of his expertise. He lived on image, not substance. From the beginning, he viewed me as an obstacle. Employees came to me for guidance, and auditors repeatedly referenced reports bearing my signature. Each time my name appeared, his jaw tightened. He hated the idea that respect could be earned rather than inherited, and it irritated him that I held influence he could not command. His resentment grew quietly at first, then transformed into something far more dangerous. Lucas did not want to learn, he wanted to dominate. His solution was not to improve, but to eliminate. He believed that by removing me, he would remove the shadow that exposed his inadequacy. When he revoked my keycard, he thought he had claimed victory. He smirked as if he had asserted authority. What he failed to understand was simple. Removing me did not clean the slate. It severed the company from the one person who kept it alive. Once the auditors entered the building, the atmosphere shifted from routine to interrogation. Their questions were not polite inquiries. They were precise demands for proof. They requested updated compliance logs, evidence of ongoing safety briefings, and the latest version of our operational procedures. Employees moved nervously from office to office, searching for documents they assumed would be readily available. Each file request led to confusion. The systems they expected to navigate easily were locked, the passwords unknown, and the directories impossible to access without the right authorization. The inspectors then asked who oversaw the encrypted safety records. Faces turned pale. No one could explain why key signatures were missing from the training registers or who maintained the legal chain of custody for confidential information. Managers exchanged helpless glances, and whispers spread through the corridors. Every question unraveled another thread, and every missing answer pointed to the same absence. My name surfaced again and again, not as a ghost of the past, but as the missing link to everything required for compliance. Lucas attempted to maintain control of the situation. He stepped forward with exaggerated confidence, assuring the auditors that all data was conveniently stored in the cloud. He spoke as though technology itself would bow to his authority. The auditors asked for access credentials. That was when the illusion collapsed. No one possessed the passwords. The digital vault holding our records remained locked behind layers of encryption. Those layers were not accidental. They were required by regulation, and I had been the only authorized custodian. Without me, the structure the company relied on turned fragile. The auditors realized they were not dealing with a temporary oversight, but a systemic failure. By removing the keeper of the keys, Lucas had transformed a compliant enterprise into a hollow shell. At precisely 11:07 a.m., the lead inspector stepped forward, holding a clipboard that might as well have been a death certificate. He cleared his throat, and the room fell silent. The words that followed cut deeper than any reprimand the company had ever received. The certification, our defining advantage, the foundation of every major contract, was revoked. There was no room for negotiation, no temporary suspension, no grace period for adjustments. The decision was final and irreversible. Years of meticulous preparation evaporated in an instant. The consequences hit immediately. Without certification, public contracts became invalid. Export permissions vanished, leaving warehouses full of inventory destined for foreign clients that would never receive it. Industrial partnerships dissolved before lunch. Insurance providers withdrew coverage, citing compliance breaches. Production lines shut down, machines silenced as though mourning the company's downfall. What once looked like a thriving enterprise now resembled a building in blackout. Panic spread faster than the announcement itself. Department heads sprinted across hallways, shouting orders no one could follow. Conference rooms filled with executives arguing over responsibilities. Phones rang incessantly as investors demanded answers, their voices sharp and unforgiving. One of the office assistants fainted from shock, unable to process the magnitude of what had just occurred. The once confident staff watched the business crumble under the weight of one catastrophic miscalculation. In the middle of the chaos stood Lucas. The smug posture he once displayed had vanished. His shirt clung to his back, damp with sweat. His eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape from the reality he had created. Only then did he grasp what experience could have taught him. Authority without knowledge is a loaded weapon. He had pulled the trigger. With one reckless act, he didn't just damage a company, he destroyed its future. The boardroom, once a place of polished presentations and controlled strategy, turned into a battleground the moment the CEO burst through the doors. His face was flushed, and his voice thundered before he even reached his seat. Around the table, executives shouted over one another, hurling accusations and waving documents that no longer held any value. Contracts that once represented years of negotiations were torn apart in fits of frustration. Someone called for outside counsel, and within minutes, lawyers filed in with briefcases full of forms that could not reverse the damage already done. Under the pressure, the polished veneer of professionalism cracked. People no longer spoke in calm tones. They barked, desperate to distance themselves from the disaster. Every eye eventually turned toward Lucas. He stood trembling, offering excuses that grew weaker by the second. He blamed outdated procedures, malfunctioning systems, and even suggested HR had misunderstood his intentions. His voice wavered as he tried to appear composed, but the panic in his eyes betrayed him. Then came the question everyone dreaded. Who authorized the Keycard revocation? The HR director stepped forward, her shoulders slumped. Her voice shook as she confessed that Lucas gave the order without board approval. She had assumed he possessed the authority. The admission silenced the room instantly. No one dared pretend ignorance anymore. This was not a technological glitch or administrative oversight. It was a deliberate act committed by someone who believed power was an accessory. Legally, emotionally, and strategically, it was sabotage. My phone buzzed repeatedly as messages poured in. Pleas for assistance, apologies disguised as urgency. I ignored each one. When they removed me, they believed I was expendable. Now they faced the reality of dismantling a structure without the person who built and maintained it. The emergency board meeting was unlike any gathering the company had ever hosted. Directors who once lounged comfortably in leather chairs now sat rigid, clutching folders as though they were shields. The air was thick with fear and guilt. Investors joined the call, their voices sharp and unforgiving, demanding explanations for the collapse that had rendered their contributions worthless. Legal teams listed projected losses, and for the first time in years, no one dared interrupt them. Every second dragged like an accusation. Partnerships that once seemed unbreakable dissolved within minutes. Foreign distributors canceled orders, citing noncompliance. Suppliers halted shipments. One global partner stated bluntly that associating with a company incapable of maintaining certification posed too great a risk. The CEO listened, shoulders hunched, his hands trembling whenever another message appeared on his tablet. He looked older with each passing report. 10 years added to his face in a single hour. Then the inevitable moment arrived. The board aligned unanimously. Lucas was stripped of his title and privileges in a dismissal that felt more like expulsion than termination. The announcement was not done in private. It was delivered publicly, recorded, and entered into the company's permanent archive. Lucas stood silent, cheeks pale, his arrogance dissolved. The empire he believed he would inherit had rejected him without hesitation. Minutes later, my phone lit up. A message appeared from the CEO, a man who never once questioned my work before allowing his son to destroy it. His words were brief, typed as if his hands shook while writing them. "Please come back. We need you." I stared at the message for a long moment. For the first time in 15 years, I felt calm. A destroyed building does not require the architect who once gave it structure. It requires burial. I had no intention of attending the funeral. The first call from a rival company came less than a week after the collapse. Their tone was not tentative or curious. It was confident, almost eager. They did not ask me to send my resume or list my achievements. They already knew who I was, what I had built, and more importantly, what my absence had done to my former employer. Their executives spoke with precision, outlining opportunities that did not sound like negotiations, but invitations. They wanted my expertise, not my loyalty, and made that clear by offering triple my previous salary, a leadership position, and complete control over compliance architecture. My arrival at the new company felt like stepping into a different world. There were no portraits of founders on the walls, no whispers about surnames, no quiet hierarchies built around lineage. Meetings revolved around contributions rather than connections. People listened when I spoke, not because they feared me, but because they understood the value of what I knew. Instead of defending my decisions, I was encouraged to innovate. Instead of explaining my worth, I was given room to demonstrate it. My office overlooked a cityscape alive with possibility. The files I once guarded with constant vigilance were now organized within a system designed collaboratively, not dictated by ego. Engineers, managers, and analysts treated protocols as strategic assets, not tedious obligations. Every improvement became part of a growing structure that reflected intention and capability. For the first time, I felt I was not simply holding something together, but building something meant to last. I had spent years maintaining the legacy of others. Now, I was shaping my own. The talent that once empowered another man's empire had become the cornerstone of my kingdom. And I no longer wondered whether I belonged. I knew. 6 months later, the company that once stood proudly at the top of its industry had become little more than a cautionary tale. The building I had walked into for more than a decade now resembled a shell, windows coated in dust, parking spaces empty, and lights permanently switched off. The logo that once gleamed above the entrance had been dismantled and hauled away like an artifact from a forgotten era. Trucks came and went, not to deliver materials or ship products, but to auction off equipment for whatever price desperate buyers were willing to offer. The empire that took years to construct had crumbled faster than anyone imagined possible. Former employees scattered across the market, seeking stability elsewhere. Some carried bitterness, others embarrassment, but most expressed disbelief that an institution so large could fall because of a single decision. Yet the truth was simpler than the rumors that circulated. The downfall was not caused by competitors or external forces. It was the direct result of arrogance. One man convinced that bloodline granted him wisdom. Lucas believed a surname could replace competence. He treated leadership as a birthright rather than a responsibility, and the company paid the ultimate price for his delusion. From a distance, I watched the consequences unfold without satisfaction or regret. I realized I had not been dismissed from something valuable. I had been released from a place destined to implode. My departure, forced and humiliating at the time, had become the turning point of my life. I found myself in an environment where merit mattered, and where the work I did shaped a future rather than defended a crumbling past. Sometimes, life removes you from a room not because you don't belong there, but because the ceiling is about to collapse. Being pushed out was not my downfall. It was my escape.